Welcome back to Conversations with B'nai B'rith. I'm CEO Dan Mariaschin. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I'll be speaking with Deborah Royster, the Assistant Director of the Office for Older Americans at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, also known as CFPB, about protecting older adults from fraud and financial exploitation. But first, if you enjoy this series, make sure you subscribe to the B'nai B'rith YouTube channel and like us on Facebook to watch all of our latest interviews. And of course, visit our website, bnaibrith.org, to learn more about our humanitarian and advocacy efforts across the globe. B'nai B'rith protects seniors and serves as a respected voice on a range of issues affecting older adults, including housing, aging in place, Social Security, and Medicare. Our Center for Senior Services, or CSS, holds training meetings throughout the year, including our annual conference on senior housing, during which we frequently invite experts from government agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, to discuss issues that impact older Americans. And one such issue that's become increasingly problematic and that we've monitored in recent years is elder financial abuse. According to CFPB, losing money or possessions to scams, fraud, and exploitation can be especially devastating to older adults who may not be able to earn back what they've lost. At our staff training meeting in 2019, B'nai B'rith held a session with CFPB and on-site building staff to expand awareness to our housing network regarding elder fraud and scams. In the same year, Janelle Doughton, our Associate Director at the Center for Senior Services, participated in a roundtable at CFPB to provide expert feedback regarding their informational material geared toward older Americans. In my conversation today, I'll be speaking with Deborah Royster, Assistant Director for the Office for Older Americans at CFPB. Deborah will be discussing the important work the Bureau does defending older adults from scams and elder fraud by increasing financial literacy and making people more aware of available resources. As a leader within CFPB, a 21st century agency that ensures markets for consumer financial products, make sure that they're fair, transparent, and competitive, Deborah is the perfect guest for this timely topic. B'nai B'rith is the largest national Jewish sponsor of non-sectarian, federally subsidized housing for older adults in the United States, with buildings in 28 communities, providing affordable housing for more than 5,000 people. Working in partnership with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, for more than 50 years, B'nai B'rith makes rental apartments available for senior citizens with limited incomes. We pride ourselves on our unparalleled expertise and leadership in advocating on aging issues, supporting our senior housing service coordinators, and protecting seniors, which we'll be focusing on today. Before joining the Bureau, Deborah served as the Chief Executive Officer of Seabury Resources for Aging, a nonprofit organization that provides affordable housing, transportation, care management, and other support services to older adults and family caregivers in the Washington, D.C. area. Deborah, welcome. So glad that you could join us today.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, CFPB is relatively new, founded in 2011. Can you share with our audience, just for starters, what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is, why it was created, as well as the need for the Office for Older Americans as part of the Bureau?
Yes, and again, thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit about the history of the CFPB. You stated it well at the beginning of the interview. The Bureau is a federal agency that makes sure that banks and lenders treat consumers fairly. The Bureau implements and enforces federal consumer financial law and ensures that markets for consumer financial products are fair, transparent, and competitive. The agency was created in 2010 with the passage of the Dodd-Frank Act, which was created in response to the significant financial challenges that came up during the Great Recession of 2007 and 2008. The law that created Dodd-Frank also mandated that the CFPB have an Office for Older Americans. And in the Office for Older Americans, we focus on issues that are of importance to those who are 62 years of age and older. the law also mandates that we collaborate with others in the aging field. So I'm really thrilled today to be here to help fulfill that mandate. In the Office for Older Americans, our goal is to help protect older consumers from financial harm and to help older consumers navigate key financial moments in their lives as they grow older. So we also identify and address emerging consumer protection risks as we see those develop, and we coordinate our efforts with other federal agencies as well as state agencies to promote consistent, effective, and efficient enforcement of consumer financial protection laws. And I just have to add on a personal note, Dan, that this work is near and dear to my heart, both personally and professionally. You mentioned my role at Seabury Resources for Aging as CEO there, and in a similar role to the role that you have at B'nai B'rith. And there I was certainly able to see up close and personal the kinds of financial challenges and risks that exist for older adults and their families. I also had the pleasure of serving as my late mother's caregiver for many years, and she lived until the age of 101 years old. It was an honor and a pleasure to be with her as she walked her journey, and I walked it with her, and really on a personal level got to see and experience and feel the kinds of issues and challenges and joys that older adults experience as we grow older.
Well, how good does that get to have a family caregiver, if you're a senior, than someone who really is an expert in the field? You know, I was thinking of how far we've come, Deborah. My parents were actually in the workforce when the stock market crash of 1929 occurred, lived through the Great Depression. And even though clearly the Roosevelt administration did many things to pull us out of it, having this kind of very specialized work that you do just wasn't available then. So it's so important really to take the long view and see really how far we've come. I want to ask you.
We have come a long way. But let me say that even as a professional in the space, at the time when I was walking my mother's journey with her, it became very clear to me that most of us do not have the knowledge or resources that we need to have to really be able to figure out the kinds of challenges, whether it's housing or healthcare or other in-home supports and services that you may need to be able to continue to live independently and successfully for as long as possible. And so that is why the mission of the Office for Older Americans really resonated and continues to resonate with my spirit, because our resources are targeted towards older adults age 62 and older, their family members, their caregivers, and professionals who interact with them. And our resources really help to serve those constituencies and to help older adults avoid elder financial exploitation, which is a significant source of financial harm to many older adults every year.
Well, you referenced your work at Seabury. My question following up on that is, why is partnering with nonprofits like the B'nai B'rith Center for Senior Services and our network an important part of the work that you do?
Partnering with aging services providers and including nonprofits is critical to the work of the Office for Older Americans and to the Bureau. You, as stakeholders who are actually providing services to older adults and their families every day, are closest to the kinds of problems and challenges and experiences that older adults have. And it's the knowledge that you have and that you share with us that helps to inform our work, Dan. It really helps us to understand what are the emerging consumer risks, consumer financial risks that are out there facing older adults. And working together, how do we identify what the solutions are, whether they are policy solutions or whether they are there are solutions that help inform consumers about their rights so that they know how to assert them. So you've got your eyes and ears focused, you're on the ground, your eyes and ears are focused on these issues every day. And having this, the relationship that we've enjoyed for many years with B'nai B'rith is just so critical to our work and helps to inform our work. And we appreciate it very much.
Now, although some people may think they don't need financial planning information as a low-income older adult, it is just as important for someone on a fixed income to be financially literate. Our residents and staff have all received training in MoneySmart for older adults, a collaboration between the CFPB and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. Can you describe the impact of this kind of guidance since it was released a few years ago? And what feedback have you received, both positive and whether there's some room perhaps for changes?
Well, we are very grateful that we've had the opportunity to collaborate with B'nai B'rith to deliver the MoneySmart for Older Adults program, which is a fraud prevention I call it a turnkey program. It is volunteer-led. It is a full curriculum with a corresponding resource book. There's an instructor guide. There's a completely finished PowerPoint presentation. There are tests that to test your knowledge after you've completed, as you go through the program. It can be delivered at a community level by anyone who is interested in this topic. We implemented this program in concert with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. It covers many types of scams and fraud and elder financial exploitation. It includes warning signs and provides tips to older consumers to help identify and to prevent the experience of these types of fraud, and to also help them understand where to report fraud, these types of fraud when they do encounter them.
So what kinds of scams are you seeing that are targeting and impacting seniors? I know we've received phone calls at home. We don't answer them anymore. I think we've come to the point where we understand if we don't recognize the phone number on caller ID, we just don't pick up many times. So what are you seeing? And is this phenomenon increasing? Even though with awareness being greater, it seems that there's just seems to be no end to these kinds of scams.
Absolutely. And just to frame the conversation, fraud and scams perpetrated against older adults represent one form of elder financial exploitation, which is more broadly the illegal or improper use of an older adult's money or property. And elder financial exploitation is the most common form of elder abuse compared to other forms like physical abuse or neglect. And elder financial exploitation can include both exploitation by someone the person knows, as well as fraud by a stranger. Just a few statistics that are interesting important from the Federal Trade Commission's 2022 Consumer Sentinel data really demonstrate the scope of the problem. Fraud affects every generation differently. Contrary to what the media narrative suggests, older adults are really not the main people who experience scams or lose money to them. In fact, people ages 30 to 39 report the highest incidence of fraud losses. But when an older adult does lose money due to fraud or scams, it tends to be more. And just to give you an example of the magnitude of the difference, the FTC report shows median losses of $660 for adults who are in their 60s, $1,000 for those in their 70s, and $1,600 for those in their 80s. Whereas people in the age range of 30 to 39 lose the median loss there is $590. And these losses can be devastating to older adults because many older adults are retired and may not have the opportunity to replace the amounts that they lose due to fraud. We see, and these are covered in the MoneySmart for older adults curriculum, many types of common fraud. Romance scams is one type of fraud that many people hear about and know about. IRS scams, various types of imposter scams where someone calls and pretends or positions himself as someone else. The grandparent scam. There are many. One of the newer scams are romance scams using crypto assets. One thing is for sure, these criminals are following the money. And so wherever there is a new product, new opportunity, they will pursue it. And we are bombarded from every source, whether it's a telephone, whether it's your computer, text scams. That's another type of scam where many older adults have been impacted. The Bureau recently actually took enforcement action in the Brightspeed case against a company that was knowingly allowing the use of its payment platform to be used to perpetrate text scams. And many older adults were impacted by those scams. So the Bureau is really focused on using all of its tools, its regulatory tools, its enforcement tools, as well as arming older consumers and their families with information to help fight back and understand when something, when a situation that's presented is unusual, odd, and it is likely to be a scam or some type of fraud.
How do you get the message out? For a long time, the conventional wisdom was that older Americans, they didn't quite know how to use the computer, so they weren't using the computer. The telephone loomed much more important, let's say, in their lives than the computer did for others. More and more seniors, though, are quite adept now using the internet. So how are you getting that message out to folks, many of whom live alone? So it's not as if you've got, let's say, two people in a household who may be able to exchange information, or younger people or children who are living who hear or know about these things. How are you doing it, and what's the best way to get that message out?
Well, I think that we have to pursue multiple paths. Certainly, educational initiatives like MoneySmart for older adults help to make older adults aware to be able to spot these types of risks and to spot fraud and scams when they see them. That is why we strongly encourage older adults and community stakeholders to participate in these programs and share this information. It is important for people to really share. I mean, many times we learn from talking to friends and family. We try to encourage folks to do that. And I always say, be suspicious. Assume that communications you receive, particularly when they're unsolicited, assume that they're fraudulent. And before you take action, be aware of some of the telltale signs of fraud, where someone is creating a sense of urgency, where, for example, they're purporting to be the IRS. We all know the IRS will never call you; they will communicate with you by mail. So understand some of the red flags, and that is certainly one way. We also, just so everyone knows, we work with community stakeholders to develop community networks. We call them Elder Fraud Prevention and Response Networks. And this is an initiative that brings together financial institutions. It brings together advocates, those who are involved in adult protection services, and other law enforcement, other community aging services providers, and others who are involved to really help understand, identify, and educate community stakeholders. And I also try to identify the perpetrators of some of these crimes. These are crimes, and many times they're perpetrated by professionals who know how to use, who know the psychological cues we will respond to in order to experience or to have a fraud, some type of fraud or other fraudulent crime perpetrated against us.
Once a person realizes that they're a victim or could have been a victim, what's the process for filing a complaint? How does one file a complaint about this?
There are a number of resources, and I would certainly recommend that that your viewers, your listeners, go to our website at consumerfinance.gov/older Americans. We do, and so it is also in the MoneySmart initiative. We provide a list of resources where to help individuals figure out how to respond when you have experienced some type of financial fraud. Certainly, reporting to law enforcement is critical, and also reporting to the Federal Trade Commission. The U.S. Department of Justice is another source where where fraud can be reported. So local and national fraud representatives or local and national law enforcement are certainly good sources, as well as the Federal Trade Commission. The Bureau, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, receives complaints from consumers on consumer or financial products and services. If it relates to a fraudulent issue, we will refer, and if it's not within the Bureau's jurisdiction, we will refer that to the Federal Trade Commission or other agency.
Did the almost 3 years of the COVID-19 pandemic change the scam and fraud landscape at all?
It actually did, because we were all more isolated in our homes and not able to engage with family and friends in the same way. We were in many cases forced to use our computers to be online, to obtain products and services, to conduct critical activities, banking activities. And so that certainly increased the incidence and the likelihood, the opportunities for fraud to be perpetrated, and particularly since so many people were isolated. And so, yes, it definitely was a factor that contributed to an increase in reported fraud and scams.
Well, we've got more or less 330 million people in the United States, many seniors, many others. Do you find, generally speaking, given what's happened, let's say, over the last 10 years, with these various scams that, and you've pointed out, even those in the 30 to 39-year-old range are being scammed. Do you find, generally speaking, that there is more awareness? How are you kind of monitoring that and measuring that?
It's hard to say whether there really is more awareness statistically. As we mentioned earlier, the fraud and scams they're constantly evolving and following the money. So as soon as it's like whack-a-mole, really, and as soon as one's identified and figure out how to address that, then there's a new one. And so it's really hard to say whether or not there's an increase. We hope that there is an increased awareness. Certainly in our MoneySmart for Older Adults initiative, we make those inquiries and ask individuals to give us a sense they believe that they have learned from those programs. And we think those types of programs are critically important. So in addition to really going after these criminals, making information available to older adults, their family members, and people who serve them is critically important. I also wanted to mention one other thing, Dan. You asked about reporting. One of the reasons why many older adults don't report when they have experienced fraud or scam is because of shame. We all feel shame when we encounter these types of losses, and the tendency is to blame ourselves, and sometimes the language that we use really blames the victim. An example of that is when you say someone fell for a crime or they were duped, and how we speak about fraud and scams is important. It's not your fault. It's not our fault when someone perpetrates a financial crime against us. That person is a criminal, and they need to be apprehended and punished for that activity. So we need to keep the focus on the perpetrators of these crimes, and not blame the victims. That will really help more older adults and their families more older adults to feel comfortable reporting. I can't tell you how many examples I've heard of situations where people did not want to report, even though it was no fault of their own, because they felt like they were to blame. And so we need to change that narrative.
Well, that's a very cogent point. And look, I think we have to look at it this way, that we're all in this together.
Yes.
Because this is so random that it can affect any American, and particularly seniors. And so we should all feel a collective sense of not only awareness, but of kind of responsibility for others in addition to ourselves, because this affects so many people.
Absolutely. It can happen to anyone. And, I had a personal experience a number of years ago when I was on a beautiful Saturday afternoon pumping gas, and I was about to put the gas pump into my tank, and my car took off. And at that moment, I realized that, someone had stolen my car because I left the keys in it. And a guy looked over at me and he said, "Hey, lady, that guy just stole your car." And I cannot tell you the shame I felt at that moment. It was just mortifying, because I thought, oh my God, I've done something so stupid, and now look what's happened. And yes, I should have left my keys in my car. I learned from that experience. But I wasn't the person who committed the crime there. I was the person who experienced that crime. And so, I think it's really important for everyone to understand that we take steps to protect ourselves. Our law enforcement and federal agencies, we use the resources we have to try to identify and apprehend the people who are doing this and stopping this illegal activity. But we also know that sometimes when things do happen, that we should not feel that we are to blame. We should take steps to report and try, if possible, to recover some of the money that, if not all of it, that we lost.
Well, everybody can play a role. I know we have a family WhatsApp group, and there's hardly a week that goes by that somebody will toss out something that they've received, and they'll say, "Is this a scam or is it real?" And then family members will weigh in. So there are a lot of different ways, actually, of addressing it. But certainly knowing that you're there and the work that you do is extremely important. Well, you can learn more about CFPB's resources for protecting seniors and preventing senior fraud by visiting. Please give us the website again, if you would, Deborah.
The website for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is consumerfinance.gov/older Americans. You can go directly to the portion of the website that addresses the resources that we have that are available to help older adults. But I think it's important for your viewers, your listeners, to understand that the Bureau, the work of the CFPB affects consumers at all stages of the lifespan. If you have a student loan, if you have a home loan, if you have an auto loan, if you have a credit card, or if you have a problem with a credit reporting agency, these are all areas that are regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So I urge everyone to take a look at our website and take advantage of the resources that are available there. And if you do have a problem with a financial product or service, file a complaint with the CFPB. The complaint portal is right on our landing page, and the Bureau will refer that complaint to the financial service provider, and they will respond within a couple of weeks. If it's an issue that the Bureau does not regulate directly, we will refer it to our federal partners who do have the authority to address those issues.
Well, Deborah, we really value your leadership, your partnership, and the invaluable work that CFPB is doing to protect all Americans, especially our seniors. It's been great speaking with you today.
Thank you, Dan, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, thank you again to CFPB Assistant Director Deborah Royster for being with us, and to you for watching this conversation with B'nai B'rith. Now, if you enjoyed the interview, subscribe to the B'nai B'rith YouTube channel, like us on Facebook for all of our latest content, and visit b'naibrith.org to learn more about our important work. For my guest, Deborah Royster, I'm Dan Mariaschin. See you next time. Take care, everyone.